Order. Order. Stuart Anderson to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I want to formally move the motion on postal services in rural areas. Now, residents in rural areas like South Shropshire deserve access to good postal services which keeps families and friends connected, businesses alive and people informed. Now, the cost of a first-class stamp has almost doubled since 2020, and it's now £1.70 a stamp. But my constituents believe they are paying more and getting less for their services. So I want to look to approach this debate in two parts. The first being post offices of vital importance in my towns and villages, and also the delivery services of Royal Mail. And I'll start with the post office. And this is a vital part of the rural economy in South Shropshire. It is a lifeline for many towns and villages, and in some areas it is the only shop for miles around, and it's increasingly, with the current banking closures, the only way to access cash. Post office services are available in branches like Acton Burnell, Broseley, Alveley, Aston-on-Clun and Bishop's Castle, as well as many more of my towns and villages. And they play a central role in keeping rural communities connected. So since the election, I'm delighted to say I successfully campaigned against the planned closures of post office services in South Shropshire, including Clunton and Clunbury. Beautiful areas. Yes, I will, yeah.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. He will know my constituency of Wolverhampton West really well because he was previously the MP there, and he will know that my constituency is a largely urban area, which includes the city centre, but even my constituents have had serious problems with bills, birthday cards not arriving, hospital appointments being missed because of post being late, and one constituent even confirmed that his business has been adversely affected. So whilst I appreciate his speech and that rural areas have particular challenges, does he agree that poor postal services is a nationwide issue affecting all communities and we need to address it as such?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. I do look back fondly on his constituency, but realise this is a problem across the country. It's a nationwide issue, as he has quite rightly pointed out. So I've also campaigned for the resumption of postal services in Clibry-Mortimer. These were closed in 2023 and left the town without vital services. But this news comes in no small part thanks to the efforts of a local resident, Ruth. I was delighted to meet with her at an advice surgery recently. And the efforts of Ruth and many others secured hundreds of signatures for a petition to keep the post office open in Clibry, and I'm delighted that it was successful. The post office network is relied on to fill the gaps left by bank closures. As many services shift online, the post office has served as a lifeline for residents in rural areas who are not able to use the internet to pay bills or access cash. This is vital for our nation's elderly, helping the 2.3 million without internet access stay connected to their family and friends. And I will continue to campaign against bank closures and look for more banking hubs in areas such as Church Stretton, which has just lost the Yorkshire Building Society and can really do with that banking hub. I was pleased to meet with only a few days ago the residents group in Broseley. They wanted to discuss the changes that have happened on the post office in the High Street, which is concerning local residents. There's been a lot of changes there, and people of Broseley have told me that it believes that it impacts safety, particularly for the elderly residents when withdrawing cash, a reduction in services and an impact on the number of trained staff on the premises. And I'm asking the owners of the post office to meet with myself and the Broseley residents to discuss this in more detail. But I want to point out to the Minister, I have concerns with the government consultation on post offices. And I believe that they could have unintended consequences. Now, an open-ended consultation, which closed on the 6th of October 2025, could remove, and I say could, remove the minimum branch requirements and leave the size of the network up to the post office. Now, the last Labour government cut the number of post offices by 38%. That was 7,166 post offices were closed between 1997 and 2010. That was more than one every single day. And I've already said how much they are a lifeline to my constituency and many others. The Conservative-led government then introduced 11,500 minimum service requirement in 2010. And since then, since 2010, the post office network has roughly remained around 11,500. Now that Labour are back, it looks like our post offices could be under threat again. And the government's consultation could see half of Britain's post offices close. That would mean 19 individual branches in South Shropshire. The proposed changes could remove the requirement for 95% of those in rural areas, like South Shropshire, to live within 3 miles of a post office. The changes could also phase out part-time outreach mobile services that are vital in my constituency, which make up 14% of the total network and typical areas that they serve, though they are open on average only 7 hours per week. They are. Yeah, of course I will.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for bringing forward this very important debate. And he mentioned there the mobile services, and my constituency of Ceredigion and Preseli also benefits greatly from these mobile services. But does he share my concern that the Post Office often now will task individual postmasters with an ever greater number of mobile spots, which, whilst we're very grateful for their efforts, does leave the network quite vulnerable for if that individual postmaster falls ill or wants to retire, we then lose significant coverage.
The Honourable Member raises a brilliant point in rural areas, and I'll come on to a point about Bishop's Castle, how this was later impacted. But there is no resilience in the system if somebody goes ill for a week. That area will not get those services. So data published by the Financial Conduct Authority shows that 93.5% of people that live in rural parts of South Shropshire live within 3 miles of a post office. This falls to the 86.8% when the mobile outreach and branches are excluded, as my honourable friend has just pointed out. Imagine if these services are cut even more in my 700 square mile constituency. That is going to leave a huge gap. Yes, I will, yeah.
Just while the gentleman's talking about mobile outreach services, one of the things that concerns me is that when the post office closes a bricks and mortar branch, it is required to carry out a 6-week consultation with the local community. When the post office closes an outreach mobile service, there is no such consultation requirement on them, even though that outreach service may have been put in because of a branch closure. So does the honourable gentleman agree with me that actually, regardless of whether it's bricks and mortar, a temporary desk in a village hall, the post office should be under the same obligation on consultation with the community?
I think the Honourable Member raises a brilliant point, and it was something I'd really like for the Minister to feed back on the approach there, because these are vital lifelines to our rural communities. But despite last week's stick and plaster U-turn, shops face a huge increase in their business rates bill. And this next year alone is going to hurt many businesses in South Shropshire. So the government have already taxed jobs with the increase to employers' national insurance. They've made it harder to hire through the Employment Rights Act. And this development means the shops, like the post office, are in grave danger. And I'll give one example in my constituency. So one of my post offices sees an increase in rateable value from £47,500 to £49,500. Now, their business liability goes from £14,221 to £18,909 at the first part of 2027, which is a little over 18 months. It sees a 33% increase, which is directly coming off their bottom line and making the very small bottom line they had even smaller or unprofitable. Now, the government committed in their manifesto to strengthen the post office network, which I fully support. But these changes could cut access to post offices for the elderly and rural communities, pushing thousands of postmasters out of work that have served local communities for decades. And I will continue to support hard-working postmasters and their customers. It's my part of my campaign to protect and enhance rural public services, given their importance to local communities. And I said the second part of the debate I wanted to move on to the Royal Mail, which I will now, in the delivery service in South Shropshire. And it's a great establishment, the Royal Mail, that was founded by King Henry VIII in 1516. So it has heritage. But this was brought to my attention, and I said I'd come on to Bishop's Castle, a great local town. When I met with a group of farmers, I was a candidate at the time, I met with a group of farmers, tenant farmers, landowners, everybody in the agricultural sector, just outside Bishop's Castle, and we were talking about connectivity, such as 5G high-speed broadband. And one of the farmers got up and said, I've got a problem with my letters. And everybody was like, what do you mean? No, I've got a problem with post not getting through. It was like, well, we were looking at connectivity for the digital space. He said, this is of vital importance. This has kept me awake at night. I went, this sounds like a really serious issue. He said, yes, I bought thousands of pounds worth of goods of the man over there. I posted the cheque a few weeks ago, and I'm sure he's not had it yet. So he brought to light what was a light-hearted point, but a made joke of a very serious issue. And then from there, what it found out is there was one person delivering in the area. When they were on holiday away, nobody else knew the route, so they couldn't have mail for a week. So it's a big issue. And like many other MPs, at the Christmas period, we like to go to the sorting office, thank the postmen and women for the great job that they do in and around our constituencies. And I've done that over many years, and the last 3 years I was in Bridge North, Craven Arms, and this year in Ludlow. But what I was seeing is a huge change to public opinion on the posts that I put out on social media. People are going, where's my letter? Why is this? Well, before, people would say, great, they do a great job. And we've all delivered leaflets in bad weather. Postmen and women do this day in, day out, all year round. And I want to thank them for their service. But actually, people are upset. They're angry. Yes, of course I will. Yeah.
In my constituency of South Devon, I've had reports of people receiving hospital appointments after the day of the appointment, so they've missed vital medical care, but also people receiving bank cards and PIN numbers coming at the same time when they're supposed to be delivered separately for security reasons. And we've also had an every driver dumping loads of parcels in a field because it was impossible for him to get round the route in the time given by his employer. And that is people using these private delivery services because they don't trust the Royal Mail, and we're seeing serious failings. So would the Honourable Member agree with me that the Royal Mail has questions to answer over the sustainability of its network in rural areas?
I think the Honourable Member raises a really important point, and I'm going to come on to, out of respect for some of my constituents and what they've been through, to highlight some of the concerns that they've gone through. And when you get to every or delivery parcels, I think everybody has learnt what the whole street doorsteps look like when they see the photo of the delivery service. Not acceptable what's happening at the moment. But a decade ago, Royal Mail was delivering about 20 billion letters. And we talked about 1516 when it was first founded. Got to a point of 20 billion letters a year, that is. And it's fallen to about 6.7 billion at the moment. But there's been expected to be a drop to 4 billion within the next 4 years. Now, under the Postal Services Act of 2011, Ofcom is responsible for ensuring that the firm carries out its functions under its universal service obligation. Now, the latest results show that the company did not meet its delivery targets for first or second class post from July to September 2025. And in October, the Royal Mail was fined £21 million for missing its annual delivery targets. So it's... Yes, of course I will.
So I'm very grateful to my next door neighbour for allowing me to intervene, and in fact some of the post that goes to the southern part of his constituency may well be sorted through the Kidderminster Postal Sorting Office. But he mentioned the fact that people aren't getting their letters. We've heard from other interventions that urgent mail is not getting there. I too have raised this on Facebook, and independently from my residents in Stourport, Kidderminster and Bewdley, so towns which should be served well, I've had 700 uninvited comments from people who are thoroughly fed up with the postal service in our part of the world. And does he agree with me that this Ofcom requirement is just not being met in any way, shape or form?
I do, and I thank my honourable friend and neighbour for intervening there. And we share the same concerns. And I did actually shamelessly look on your Facebook post and thought it was a great idea. I also pushed it out to my residents who are in a similar number at the moment. There is sheer anger at the lack of delivery. But in July 2025, Ofcom announced changes to the universal service obligation. Now, Royal Mail only needs to deliver second-class mail every other day instead of 6 days a week. The changes also drop the requirement for Royal Mail to deliver second-class letters on Saturdays. But these changes have not yet come into effect in the UK, with Royal Mail planning to roll these out nationwide by early 2026. So from April, this is where it gets even harder, the target to deliver second-class mail within 3 days will also be reduced from 98.5% to 95%. The target to deliver 93% of first-class mail within 1 working day will also drop to 90%. They're not even meeting the current targets. So on the 28th of January 2026, Citizens' Voice revealed that 16 million people, that's 16 million people, representing 29% of UK adults, had experienced postal delays over Christmas. This figure has doubled in a year, and it's its highest in 5 years. 5.7 million people have missed important letters, as we heard from honourable members today, like health appointments, benefit decisions and legal documents. I believe enhanced protections are needed for rural areas where many people continue to depend on postal services. Of course I will, yeah.
Thank you very much for giving way. And I have done a survey in my constituency of Rushcliffe. Over 700 people have responded to that, and there is a whole range of issues around health, finance, legal and other types of communication. But less than 20% of them had actually contacted the Royal Mail itself to say they were having problems. So I wonder whether he would agree with me that actually what the Minister needs to do is put pressure on Royal Mail to be honest and investigate its own problems and demonstrate those to us as Members of Parliament.
I think the honourable member raises a very interesting point, and I today have launched my survey that I'll be pushing out later today to hear more details from residents. But there is a need to be honest with this, and more often than not, we'll see as MPs, people will contact us. It's not always the easiest to find out why you're not getting it, or they believe that they won't be told what they need or won't have an answer, where they believe that the MPs can follow this up to get it. But in recent weeks, mail has been delayed in 68 postcodes in the West Midlands. Now, 68 postcodes in the West Midlands. I know I've got a big constituency, but I have missed cases of mail in at least 30 postcodes, just in my constituency. But let's look at what that missed mail means. It's not just the letter hasn't arrived. This has serious impact for residents in South Shropshire. And I've chosen some casework of people who've written in and given me issues. But what I've seen, the biggest areas of missed mail is around WV15 and WV16 postcodes, which is around the Bridge North Highley. Highley has a huge problem of receiving mail at the moment, and the surrounding areas. So this pain is also felt across the constituency. But here's some specific areas first before I go on to residents. Claverley. No mail between the 2nd of January and the 16th of January. When it eventually arrived, there were car finance letters dated from mid-December. Much Wenlock, voted the happiest place to live. Yeah. No mail between the 5th and 7th of January, and then in the 8th of January, 15 items delivered at the same time. Church Stretton. Constituent has been told that parcels are being prioritised over letters. Hospital letters are not getting delivered on time. Linley in Bishop's Castle. Post is not being delivered to the constituent's address because it's too far down the lane, so she's having to collect it from a neighbour. That's not about delivery on time. That's just not an acceptable service. Oroton. Birthday cards posted on the 16th of January. Second class to Ludlow has still not arrived from the 16th of January. Bridge North. Constituents generally wait between 1 and 2 weeks for post office, but more often than not have to go to the sorting office to collect it. That is not called a delivery service, that is a collection service. Very different. Now, these are some individual cases that are felt very strongly and I've been helping to support at the moment. So, Maureen, not fair when you get taken off a waiting list for not turning up at a hospital appointment when you haven't received the appointment for, as other people have already mentioned. Mark believes it's damaging his business reputation for customers without email address, and I'll come on to internet access in a minute, because they're getting certificates from his business 3 weeks late. It doesn't look professional, and there's nothing he can do about that. Russell, late hospital appointments usually received a week or more after the appointment date. Now, this one's very concerning. Sarah was on a waiting list. The surgery hospital admittance letters and information arrived 10 days after the operation date, causing her more issues than you would care to believe. Ian has only had 2 deliveries since Christmas. And up until 3 days ago, 2 deliveries arrived in 2 days. Inconsistent. Ada, doctor's appointment, a week late at the best of times. So Jill, says we have had mail delivered once a week. Friday if we're lucky. However, Royal Mail delivers parcels to our address every single day. And I'm hearing that time and time again. Parcels are getting delivered, but letters are not. Lynn, it's dreadful. The post office usually takes 8 days to arrive that are posted in this country. Cards I posted to America took 6 days to arrive. That is a failing system. If it takes 8 days here, but you can get it internationally far quicker. And Amanda posted an important parcel with medical cream for a relative, and it took 7 days, and it was 24-hour tracking service. She paid for it. She also posted a birthday card with a first-class stamp that took 9 days. And as I finish off, Daniel had mail come that is 4 weeks late, while Janet posted a card to her grandson only to Staffordshire, which is the neighbouring county, and it took 15 days. She got mail to Australia quicker than she did to the neighbouring county. Constituents in Highley, as I have mentioned, repeatedly tell me they are exceptionally lucky if they get service once a week. And Dank's elderly mum has waited since New Year's Eve for a PIN card, and the honourable members talk about PIN card and bank cards arriving at the same time. She has still not had this PIN card since New Year's Eve, and she is cut off from accessing cash. Yeah, of course I will. Yeah.
I just want to add an extra story there. I have a gentleman in my constituency who missed a letter or a couple of letters related to a parking fine, and he's actually now had a CCJ put on him and hadn't had the opportunity to actually contest that fine. Now, he admits that he wanted to contest the fine in the first place, but he now has that CCJ and is having to deal with it. So this is having real-life consequences. I'm sure you would agree with me that isn't acceptable.
Definitely agree. It's not acceptable at all. And I believe as the Minister's watching this, and I'm pretty sure Royal Mail will be, we need this service to change because people are getting penalised through no fault of their own, and it's having a very damaging and detrimental impact to many people. And it's clear from these stories alone that postal services in rural areas are an absolute mess. On the mess.
I thank the honourable member for
I didn't mean it that way.
Royal Mail staff in my area tell me, apart from having to focus on first-class post, a big cause to delays is poor recruitment, which leads to unachievable workloads. Does your honourable member agree it is no surprise our rural post service struggle when Royal Mail officers and postmen and women are only paid little above minimum wage?
So I thank for the intervention. The recruitment is a serious issue within Royal Mail, as we've seen at the moment. Some of the people have worked there for years, and when I have been to the sorting offices, they would tell me of 5 years ago how they delivered far less. 20 years ago, it was a completely different service to where it is now. So we certainly need to ensure that they are looked after and we have the right packages to retain people within Royal Mail. So, as I've said, that these stories alone are showing that postal services in rural areas are an absolute mess. Cards, serious medical appointments, fines, invoices and legal letters are being missed because of the bare minimum standards are not being met in South Shropshire. I'm not asking for anything new. I'm asking that the minimum standard is met for my constituents. And it's all well and good to say we move to the digital age, but 40% of South Shropshire residents are not on 5G. And only 43% of homes do not have high-speed broadband. And I can guarantee you those 43% and that 40% are probably in the same areas with the remotest parts of the constituency that do not have connectivity. They cannot get on the internet, they cannot get on their phone to access services, and they're not getting their mail. They are completely excluded from modern-day way of life, and that is not acceptable. Physical letters do still matter. And many of my constituents are rightly angry, actually they're livid by this, that Royal Mail have prioritised, and I have many documented evidence, Royal Mail have prioritised parcels over letters, and it's come at the detriment to my constituents. And I look forward to hearing from the Minister what can be done to improve the delivery of letters in South Shropshire as urgently as possible. And to conclude, Mr Stringer, postal services in rural areas matter. And the residents of South Shropshire are rightly angry at the lack of good and functioning services in some of my towns and villages. Rural areas are sick and tired of being ignored, while at times urban areas are prioritised. And it's the chipping away of these rural areas that is starting to hurt my constituents. We need to protect the post office network and hold Royal Mail to the standards my constituents expect. And right now, this is just not good enough.
So, can I remind members that they need to bob at the end of every contribution if they wish to be called. There were 12 people standing at that particular moment. I intend to call the closing speeches at 3:30, so I'm going to impose a time limit of 3 minutes, which doesn't leave very much time for interventions. The question is that this House has considered postal services in rural areas. Steve Young.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. Springer. My constituency is part of the rural county of Nottinghamshire, and many of my communities are feeling this impact of poor service by Royal Mail, facing unacceptable inconsistencies in delivery. I've received correspondence from constituents across Mansfield. It's all with a similar issue that their post letters are going undelivered, and they're rightly angry about this. My constituent Jim says his grandson missed out on an invitation to a job interview because the letter didn't arrive. Another constituent, Gail, said several pieces of her mail have gone missing, including letters for local hospital appointments. It's becoming all too familiar, and I think many members will recount similar issues. It doesn't have to be even a birthday card from a loved one, a bill. Everyone needs their mail. Government agencies such as the DWP, banks, hospitals, the police, courts, many other organisations only communicate by post, and the consequence of getting one of those letters late can be hugely damaging in many, many ways. And having spoken to postal staff in Mansfield, I know that they are under huge pressure, and I want to pay tribute to them, who they all work incredibly hard in all weathers to deliver our mail. And it saddens me that Royal Mail, having correspondence to me, blamed these issues on staff sickness. While I'm meeting with Royal Mail bosses in the very near future, postal workers have spoken to me on the condition of anonymity, saying they've been instructed to prioritise parcels over letters. They've also mentioned that retention of staff is difficult because newer recruits are being paid less than their colleagues, and that management are not hiring enough people to get the job done. This is the credible reason for the problems that we're witnessing, and it is not good enough. To conclude, Royal Mail have to step up. If they don't, the regulator, Ofcom, should get involved, I believe, to guarantee that Royal Mail meets that universal service obligation. Communities across our country and in Mansfield are sick and tired of the excuses. They just want their mail delivered on time, and it's not too much to ask. My message, Mr. Stringer, is therefore very clear for Royal Mail. Get this mess sorted out, get your house in order, get your act together, or we will make you do so.
With you in the chair, and can I start by congratulating the Honourable Member for South Shropshire for his excellent speech. I'm the MP for North Shropshire, and he described many, many similar circumstances, so I will try and keep my comments brief. Rural services aren't good enough across the piece, whether that's transport links, mobile phone coverage and access to banking, and postal services are now going in the same direction. The Post Office Green Paper consultation last year causes particular concern for rural areas. The suggestion that the statutory minimum network size of 11,500 branches protecting communities could be removed would compound an access problem that's already acute. Villages in Trevonen were devastated in my constituency when their post office shut, while across North Shropshire, outreach services have been withdrawn in Cockshut, Clive, Western Ryn, Knockin, West Felton and Ryton 11 towns.
Would you give way?
I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. In November last year, Henstridge Post Office closed, leaving a rural village without a vital service. Luckily, a local resident, Barry, is working with the Post Office to reopen the facility as soon as possible. But does my honourable friend agree that following last year's Green Paper, the government must now commit to rural-proofing the Post Office?
I couldn't agree with her more, because if you live in somewhere like Cockshut and take the bus to the post office in Ellesmere, you'll have to wait 3 hours to get the next bus back to home. And you can imagine how difficult it is for people who live in the many nearby villages who have no bus service at all. Jean, who lives in Western Rynn, said, "I now live in a village where there's nowhere to buy stamps and there's no access to an ATM. I'm 88 and I can no longer drive. I am completely isolated." These cuts have a grave impact on people's lives and well-being, and how can we justify leaving vulnerable people isolated in this way in 2026? Post offices and outreach services also act as more than just a postal service. Communities rely on them for access to cash and banking, government services and parcel collection. It's particularly crucial given that 73% of North Shropshire bank branches have closed since 2015, with Oswestry the only remaining market town in the constituency with a functioning bank branch. Many constituents, particularly older people and small businesses, depend on post offices to access cash and banking. It's no good pointing to online banking as the solution if you live in a village like Welshampton where you can't get a mobile signal and there's no full fibre. We need to save our local post offices to prevent financial exclusion and support the small businesses who will deliver the growth our economy needs. Not only is access to the vital the vital services provided by the Post Office limited, but the delivery of post, as we've heard, has become extremely unreliable. First and second class post are meaningless categories in my area. My own post comes in 2 bulk deliveries each week, and constituents have reported going 3 weeks with no delivery. Meanwhile, postbox collection times have been changed without notice as well. It's very frustrating at the best of times. For those relying on Royal Mail for their NHS correspondence or time-sensitive post, as we've heard, such as legal documents, parking fines, it can be extremely costly to their health, time and finances. Several constituents have told me they missed NHS appointments because letters took a week to reach them. And last month, one constituent, who is diabetic and was waiting for an appointment, missed correspondence about an appointment arranged for the 22nd of January and now needs to wait till March. I've received reports of people being charged with contempt of court for not returning papers in time, even though the papers didn't arrive until after the due date. Now, in my latest meeting with Royal Mail, representatives explained the challenges they're facing with recruitment and retention, and addressing this issue requires investment in rural services across the board. Given the reliance of so many people on the post for vital services, I'm sure everyone here appreciates the need to protect and support our rural services. I would be grateful if the Minister could outline what the Government is doing to hold the Post Office to account to meet its universal service obligation, and what steps the Government is taking to protect not only services such as post, but banking and public transport as well in rural areas, as people are desperately badly isolated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to be part of this debate. I'll begin by declaring my interest. I started at the Royal Mail in 1986 on an apprenticeship. I've walked the rounds, I've sorted the frames, and I've stood up for postal workers prior to coming to Parliament, but I've never seen postal services in such a crisis as they are today. And some of that is structural, but nothing to do with that is to do with the workforce, because I tell you, they are, and their morale is down. I went in and saw them on many occasions, and basically, you know, they want to deliver the service that the customer demands, and they're being prevented from doing so based on cost-cutting exercises throughout the Royal Mail, and that's basically what needs to stop. Last week, nationally, Royal Mail delivered just 76% of first-class quality and just 86% of second-class quality. They're not abstract numbers, as people has already said. They're missed hospital appointments, they're missed legal deadlines, they're missed chances to pay bills on time. And what people are telling me is they'll have a scheduled day off during the week. So let's say it's a Wednesday, they then walk back into work on the Thursday, and all their Wednesday work is still there, that they've now got to deliver with their Thursday work. And then they're told you're not getting any extra time in order to do it. That leads to delay after delay, and it's impacting our communities. I've had representations from Oundle, Thrapston, Rawn, Stanwick, Corby, telling me about the problems that people have. And I have to say this, the quickest way to get a letter delivered is if you put it inside a parcel. That's the fact of the matter, because they're privatising parcels as far as the deliveries are concerned. And that's got to stop as well. People deserve a service. This is a service. It's a unique service. It keeps their communities connected, and it's got a legal obligation under a universal service obligation to make sure that that's done. Now, the problem we've got as well is the competition cherry-picking, because the final mile delivery is the most expensive part of it. So they'll go in, they'll pick up the bulk mail, they'll spread it and sort it, then they give it back to Royal Mail and say, right, you deliver it, because we can't afford to do that, because there ain't no money in it. In addition to that, they're taking parcels as well, giving them to the Royal Mail and saying, you deliver the final mile in rural areas, because they can't afford to do it. That sort of thing's either got to stop, or those private companies can start paying towards the universal service obligation so that we can make sure that we protect it moving into the future. So it's services that we're protecting for people and making sure that all of those accessing that service can do so on the basis that they're paying towards it. Postal workers want to deliver the service that customers want. They want to serve their neighbours and they want to serve their communities. But they can only do that with fair and honest discussion and with harmonised conditions, working together as one organisation and with workers treated with dignity. And that's how we're going to deliver and make sure that we can take Royal Mail into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Springer. Can I first of all congratulate my honourable friend on bringing forward this timely and much-needed debate. I did actually have a 10-minute speech, but I think that's gone by the wayside of 3 minutes. I think what we've heard today, Mr. Stringer, is the strength of the constituency parliamentary system that we have. That people across this House, listening to their constituents through email, telephone calls, the occasional letter when it arrives, being told from the ground up a fundamental problem and a failure, a catastrophic failure, in my view, of the current Royal Mail delivery service. So why is that happening? Well, we've heard already that the Royal Mail are prioritising parcels. I've heard that too. Clearly that is because they are making more money from parcel deliveries. But the fact is, as we've heard from the Honourable Member for Corby, and again, it shows the strength of this Parliament, for all its flaws and faults, that we all come from different backgrounds and we draw upon those experiences, that in his experience, that this is the worst. In my 21 years in this House, I've never had to raise a point of order, an oral departmental question, attend a debate like this, and meet with the Minister next week to talk about Royal Mail and postal delivery services. Never. And that is high praise, by the way, for the Royal Mail and all the fantastic posties that we all know in our communities. And I think we'd all agree that this is not about posties, this is about the senior management of the Royal Mail, corporate decision-making at the very highest level that I believe, perhaps, is actually a deliberate strategy to upset the government, to upset Ofcom, so that Royal Mail could then be in a position where they can discard the letter delivery service because it isn't profitable enough for them. But there are real life consequences, as we've heard from other members, and I did have a lot to mention. No, I don't have time to say the health ones, but here, health. Your letter, the MP's letter, my letter, informing us of what steps you have taken 9 days. It took 9 days to arrive from the date of the letterhead. We appear only to receive 3 or 4 deliveries a month. A hospital letter is now not being received, although being sent second week in January from the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital. I'm still missing a test results from the NHS posted on 30th of January. They confirmed it was posted by the department when I called after 2 weeks. My constituents in Muxton, Newport, Wellington, Shifnal or Brighton, all of those places affected and impacted, having real life consequences. Important legal documentation, health documentation, cancer results. Time matters, and that is why this is a very serious issue. It needs to be investigated, and I hope the Minister and Ofcom will investigate it urgently.
It's an honour to serve under your chairmanship. I also would like to thank the Honourable Member for South Shropshire for securing this very important debate. Having heard from many residents in my own constituency about the challenges they face in receiving reliable and consistent postal services, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for securing this debate. Far too often, those living in rural and semi-rural areas feel they are expected to simply accept a less efficient service than in more urban communities, and the consequences of this disparity are clear. To be clear, I salute the staff of our postal service who work unbelievably hard, but are sadly being let down by management. I say this as a son of a postie and a mum who worked for the Royal Mail. But the modern challenge is very real. Take Shoebury, for example, a small town bordering Southend where my constituents have long endured a postal service that feels disjointed and dysfunctional. I've spoken to residents who've had Christmas presents arrive months late, legal letters lost and vital medical appointments missed, of letters arriving after their allotted date. This is just not good enough. Being located at the end of a railway line or beyond the boundaries of a busy city cannot be a justification for substandard service. Residents of Shoebury and across the UK feel they are being punished on the basis of their geographical location. We also know that in many cases the most rural parts of this country have older populations for whom a reliable postal service is even more crucial. While many people are moving away from paper communications, this is not the case for everybody, and we cannot allow those who rely on traditional post to be neglected. I welcome this government's decision to launch the first comprehensive review of the Post Office in 15 years, and I look forward to seeing how the investment being made improves services across the country. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for South Shropshire for allowing us the opportunity to speak in this debate, and for his setting the scene, which is incredible. Well done. We highlight the, not because it gives us any joy, we highlight the feelings of Royal Mail and communities, and in particular rural communities. I wish to preface my remarks by highlighting that my own Royal Mail workers are great. I spent some time with them at Christmas. I know most of them, I've probably grew up with most of them, and I know where the problems lie. It's not in the staff, but it's in the surroundings. The building is not fit for purpose. Car parking for 30 vans, yet there's 50 vans that need car parking. There's not enough space for sorting. And little wonder that the post in some of my areas is taking up to a month to get through. There's a priority for parcels. They don't try to hide it. And I understand that Royal Mail puts that first, and letters delivery were downgraded as a result. Staffing levels, the honourable gentleman who made an intervention, and when I spoke to the Post Office and the Royal Mail guys, they told me that one of the reasons is maintaining and holding staff. And if you give a staff member a minimum wage and no more, you're not going to keep them, because they're always looking for a different job which is going to give them better payment. So that's something that has to be addressed as well. I know, Minister, whenever it comes to addressing these things, you'll do your best. And my constituency of Strangford and all the villages have problems. One example, in Portavogie, one gentleman in the house had no mail for a month, and then he got 29 letters the next day, which included 3 hospital appointments, which he missed. He missed them all. His health has been unfortunately poor, and that had a detrimental effect upon his health. So it's not just a matter of not getting your monthly bank statement. It's, in some cases, health is at stake. And I believe it's necessary that Royal Mail makes investment in sorting offices to be able to get facilities in place that once again can facilitate a routine post service that is fit for purpose. Just give an example. The heater in my office broke over the Christmas period. It amazed me to see that one of my staff ordered a heater, was delivered the next day. How much did I pay? I didn't pay 1 penny for the delivery. I do pay £7.99 a month and get unlimited free delivery, but it astounds me that I pay over £1 for 1 letter, and it takes weeks to make it, whereas other things are able to be delivered in a short time. It can't just be the facilities in Newton Ards that aren't up to scratch, as I listen to every other member saying the same thing. We need root and branch changes, and we need the Minister to stand firmly with us as we press forward for what we need to see change. The official website says that Royal Mail is reducing second-class delivery to alternate weekdays, Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday the next week. First-class letters will continue to be delivered 6 days a week. And this is nowhere near the service we are seeing, and Royal Mail must be held accountable. Mr Chairman, I look very much forward to the Minister in his response. It's not an easy to answer all these questions, but I look forward to what he's got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. It's an honour to serve under your chairmanship, and can I commend the Honourable Member for South Shropshire for securing this debate and his excellent speech. Last year, postal services became a source of real frustration, anxiety and, frankly, anger in Radnorshire. Across Brecon, Radnor and Cwmtawr and right across rural Wales, we saw serious problems in the run-up to Christmas. Parcels were marked as delivered but never arrived. Items were left at farm gates, on main roads or in full view of passers-by. Christmas presents went missing. Essential items were delayed for days or even weeks and then marked as lost. And when things went wrong, people found it almost impossible to speak to a real human being to sort it out. And I want to be clear, in my opinion, these problems stem from the corporate leadership of Every. The problem is a systemic one within their business and their business model, and rural areas are feeling the consequences first and hardest. Constituents of mine in the Tame Valley tell me that their experience with Every was awful, with one constituent telling me that they have never received a single Every parcel on time. Most never arrive, and those that do are weeks or months late. My constituents tell me that they often pay extra for faster shipping, but they then have to spend significant time processing refunds and working with credit card companies to recover some of the lost money. A frustration for customers is that they often cannot choose their delivery company. It's chosen for them by the retailer they are buying from. So when a parcel company performs badly, consumers are simply stuck with the consequences. Consumer bodies back this up, and companies like Every consistently rank bottom for customer satisfaction, yet too often nothing seems to change. And that's where regulation matters. There must be clear, enforceable service standards for parcel deliveries, including in rural areas, on safe delivery practices, accurate tracking, and proper access to customer support when things go wrong. Consumers who have no choice over their courier should not be left navigating automated systems or vague updates when a parcel is lost or delayed. And finally, if companies repeatedly fail customers, especially in rural and hard-to-serve areas, there must be consequences, not just guidance or warm words, but real accountability. For many of my constituents, Every's failures meant money lost, ruined Christmases, wasted time, and a growing sense that rural communities are once again expected to put up with worse service. Rural Wales deserves reliability, respect and accountability, not excuses. I urge ministers to take this issue seriously and to ensure that parcel delivery works for every part of the country, not just the easiest ones to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for South Shropshire for bringing forward this debate, and to the Member for Corby for a useful tip. Perhaps if I had put my grandson Theo's birthday card in a parcel, it might not, even though posted first class from Moffat to Troon, taken 3 weeks to arrive. Fortunately, he's only 2, so he hasn't held it against me. But these are the experiences of other constituents. And I think, as we've heard, firstly, we have to pay tribute to our posties, because it's not their fault what's happening. It's the direction that's coming from above, and this obsession with parcels. Now, the Royal Mail is to deliver mail, not just parcels. It's not a parcel delivery company, and I hope the Minister can reinforce that message. Royal Mail, in my own constituency, I think have taken many steps to make it less attractive for people to post mail, particularly as the Honourable Lady mentioned, the sort of surreptitious introducing of early collection times. If you want to post a first-class letter in many parts of my constituency, you've got to do it before 9 a.m. Otherwise, you have to travel an inordinate distance to post a first-class letter. As we've heard, particularly in rural communities, people often and still suffer from poor broadband, poor mobile reception, and are generally older. And that is the group in the population for whom the Royal Mail and its services are most important. And I particularly want to pay tribute to Barry Knock, who's the chair of the Quothquan and Thankerton Community Council in the Clydesdale part of my constituency, who has constantly held Royal Mail to account for their failures. Because, as we've already heard, if someone's off, the mail isn't delivered. If someone is sick, the mail isn't delivered. And the Minister is a very experienced campaigner, and he knows it's quite different sending somebody out into a modern housing estate to deliver something than sending them out into a vast rural area. We need people who know those localities to be doing that job. I want him to take away one very specific issue, and that is we're heading into the Scottish Parliament election, we're heading into other elections. A very large number of people have a postal vote in these rural communities. I want the Minister to be able to tell me that he is satisfied that Royal Mail has the capacity to deliver the postal votes and return them to the election officers, because that is a very significant issue, and it did not go well, certainly in my constituency, during the 2024 general election. And it's clear members, when they raise issues with Royal Mail, they just get excuses. Hopefully the Minister can put a rocket up them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under your chairship, and I'd like to congratulate the honourable member for South Shropshire for securing this important debate. As every postie and every Liberal Democrat deliverer knows, rural delivery is hard. Homes are harder to find, walks between addresses are longer, and journeys to sorting offices take more time. The reality means that our posties work incredibly hard, particularly during peak periods, and they deserve better support to deliver the services that they do. Royal Mail's performance shows the scale of the challenge. In Dorchester postcode area, performance was 79.2%, and in Taunton area, 74.4% of first-class mail was delivered the next working day against a target of 93%. Ofcom has fined Royal Mail more than 37 million over the last 3 years and has demanded a credible improvement plan, but rural customers are still waiting to feel the change. Alongside delivery issues, post offices themselves are under pressure. Post offices are the heart of rural communities, providing access to cash, banking, DVLA services. They're often small village shops and offer foreign exchange services. With nearly 2,000 bank branches closing nationally in the past 3 years, post offices are often the last remaining place for in-person banking, especially for older residents and those without reliable digital access. In Housestock, my constituents are deeply concerned that Lloyds Bank will soon stop allowing cheque deposits at their local post office. With the nearest Lloyds branch miles away and others closing, this change risks undermining both the community and the long-term viability of rural post offices. Parcel delivery companies like Every present a huge problem for many. Ofcom research shows that 68% of customers in the South West experienced delivery issues in the last 6 months. Say what you want about Every, they are consistent. Consistently bad, consistently amongst the worst performers. I also find they're also very egalitarian, in that I get no more of a response from my parliamentary email address than the public do from any other one. In Sherborne, a cafe owner described repeated contradictory tracking messages, parcels failing to arrive, and no meaningful customer support. In Cashstock and Maiden Newton, residents have contacted me about reports of parcels being delivered to the wrong village altogether, or simply disappearing. One constituent put it plainly: rural areas appear to be outside of Every's business model, yet customers are never told this up front. Most people would happily pay more for a reliable service, but instead they're left guessing which courier will be used and powerless when things go wrong. This points to a clear imbalance. Royal Mail is tightly regulated and fined for failure, while private parcel firms face far weaker oversight. There are two changes that the government could make. First, the government should strengthen Ofcom's powers over parcel delivery firms, bringing them much closer to the standard applied to Royal Mail. And secondly, vendors should be required to clearly state before purchase which courier will deliver an item. Transparency would allow consumers to make informed choices and protect rural customers from the repeated failures they are experiencing.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I thank the member for Shropshire South Shropshire for bringing attention to this important issue. Pressure has been building on postal services for decades, and in my former career in advertising, I worked on behalf of the Irish Post Office on Pust to try and at least slow the decline in volumes. That was 20 years ago, but of course the challenge has got much greater now, and the Royal Mail is in danger of turning into a parcels delivery service with the occasional letter attached. So I visited my own local delivery office in Horsham just before Christmas, and the team there seemed to be doing a great job, and I really want to support them in every way that I can. But fundamentally, postmen are being expected to cover wider areas than ever before in the past, as other members have mentioned. So the problem is obviously more acute in rural areas because Just like our bus service, mail deliveries don't come as often as they used to. One couple contacted me to say that they'd never received my postal invitation to my MP surgery in their village. Now, you might say that missing the chance to talk to me face-to-face is not the end of the world, but it did leave them unsure as to what else they might be missing through lack of notice. So, but more seriously, my constituent Alison, who lives in Horsham, lost her job, her income, and her driving licence because critical correspondence did not arrive. She works in domiciliary care and she drives between patients' homes, carrying out time-critical visits involving medication, catheter care, support for bedridden clients. She also cares for her 93-year-old disabled mother and is the next of kin for her 96-year-old aunt. She received a letter from the Magistrates' Court in late December, dated weeks earlier, warning of a proposed driving disqualification. It was the first correspondence she had received on the matter, and she responded immediately. But despite this, a court summons, which was also delayed, arrived too late for her to attend. She was disqualified in her absence. Despite her attempt to reverse this decision, swearing on oath, it's made no difference, and she has lost her job. This is simply unacceptable. So this is, in the end, this is about people's lives. This is about responsibilities to family and people's ability to earn. So as chair of the APPG for Rural Business and the Rural Powerhouse, I feel a responsibility to speak up when rural villages and businesses in Horsham and across the UK are not being treated fairly. The universal service obligation exists for a reason, and it must work, not just in theory, but in practice too, for the people who depend on it most. Rural Britain does not ask for special treatment, but it does demand a postal service that is reliable and fit for the realities of rural life. This is the standard our constituents deserve, and it is the standard this government must insist on.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. An absolute pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Representing the biggest and most remote mainland British constituency, I can tell you my constituents understand the challenges faced by the Royal Mail. Inclement weather, huge distances. But I want to give one example of something that infuriates my constituents, and it's a pot of paint that was ordered by one of my wonderful people from just the borders of England and Scotland, 40 quid to deliver it. That seems absolutely shocking for one pot of paint. Now, I don't lay that necessarily at the door of the Royal Mail. My next example is my wife's flowery dress. In the last months of last year, she ordered a special flowery dress for Christmas. And it was the same old story. It didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come. Now, my erstwhile colleague from Holyrood spoke of the 2-year-old who didn't really mind the delay. I can promise you that my better half minded the delay absolutely hugely. So I have experienced at first hand the irritation that constituents feel with the standard of delivery. And of course, in the end, it never came. So I was instructed to go out in the snowy weather and to go around all the neighbours checking their garden sheds to see if that's what... And I can tell you, if you're an MP and you ask somebody, may I look in your garden shed, you get a very interesting reply. And then we had to wait for the refund, and eventually it did come. So I see it, Mr. Stringer, as a punishment on where my constituents live simply because of their postcode. It makes life very difficult for them, and if you're trying to run a small business, it's a real old slap in the face. One other point I want to mention is that the Royal Mail is going green, and we understand the necessity for that, absolutely, net zero, etc., etc. But now they're not going to take the mail up to the Highlands by aeroplane, but they're going to take it in a diesel lorry on a very, very long journey on the A9. And anyone who's seen 007 go up the A9 in Skyfall realizes what a long way. And is that really green to use all that diesel going up the road? I don't know. So I would ask that to be passed on. Can we please think again? And finally, I want to end up by saying simply this. You know, I'm so glad other people have paid, given the posties their place. They're wonderful people. And to end on a light note, I think the last person to speak from the back benches, some years ago, a letter was sent from a religious organization in the United States. And it simply said on the big envelope, to the personal representative of the Lord Jesus Christ, Highlands, Scotland. And a wag, someone in the Royal Mail, wrote on it,
try Jamie Stone. I wish I'd kept it. Mr. Stringer, I hope on that light note, word we pass back to our posties. They do a smashing job. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve on the chairmanship. And can I start by thanking the member for South Shropshire for his work in securing this debate and that really excellent opening speech, which is highlighting so many of the everyday frustrations and difficulties that people experience when they're not getting their post. And thank all of the honourable members who came forward with examples of their own, indeed.
And I am very, very proud to represent some fantastic small businesses in my rural constituency. But Mr Barclay, owner of Cards by Me Love in Tiverton, has been left admitted shoulder to burn, not of his own making, chasing missing parcels and placating disgruntled customers. To make matters worse, he's faced an unresponsive Royal Mail. Would the honourable member agree with me that these instances of abject failure actively undermine the ability of small businesses to operate and cause serious reputational damage in what are already trying circumstances?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that intervention. She's absolutely right. We've talked a lot here today about the implications for individuals, and I particularly want to highlight the example from my honourable friend from Horsham and that really appalling incident, and just send my very best wishes to his constituent who suffered that really unacceptable issue. But my honourable friend from Tiverton and Minehead absolutely right to point out the impact on businesses as well. Post offices across the UK play a vital role in our local communities with millions of people depending on them. They provide critical services on our local high streets, from community banking, foreign exchange and the provision of DVLA services. And often these services act as a lifeline, especially for the elderly, as we've heard so many times today, and those with limited transport options or those areas without reliable access to online services. Currently, 99.7% of the population live within 3 miles of a post office, and 4,000 of these branches are open 7 days a week. Last July, the government launched their consultation on the future of the post office, and the Liberal Democrats welcomed the steps to put post offices on a more sustainable footing. However, it's essential that the reforms protect local services and post office jobs, and that no post office is closed without proper consultation with the local community. Digitisation can improve access for some users and increase efficiency, but the government must ensure that post offices remain financially viable and continue to offer face-to-face services for those who need them, particularly in rural areas with limited broadband or internet access, as my colleague for North Shropshire pointed out. Rural communities face compounded challenges, including poor digital connectivity, cuts to public transport and the loss of local services, all of which make access to alternatives more difficult when post offices or banks close. The decline of high street services in rural areas has been an ongoing issue in the UK, with banks and other essential services disappearing at an increasing rate. Just last week, Santander announced the closure of 44 of their branches, and this has significant consequences for residents, particularly older people, those with limited digital access and small businesses. And this pattern places an increased importance on the role of a local post office. In the past 3 years, nearly 2,000 banks branches have closed across the UK, including hundreds of rural branches due to declining in-person transactions and the rise of online banking. Many villages and small towns now lack a single bank, forcing residents to travel long distances for financial services. These challenges are often compounded by limited broadband or access to the internet, leading to swathes of people in rural communities being excluded from online services and digital banking. Liberal Democrats are concerned about the inequality of provision as the 5G network is rolled out. I believe it is wrong that people should be disadvantaged simply because of where they live. And I urge the government to prioritise major investment in broadband for underserved communities. Alternative solutions such as banking hubs are emerging, but there are not enough of them, and the government should be facilitating more to ensure that people across the country can access vital services when they need them and prevent digital exclusion for people in rural areas. Royal Mail provides the universal postal service. It must deliver letters to every address in the UK 6 days a week at a uniform price and parcels 5 days a week. Royal Mail's performance is measured against quality of service targets which are set out by Ofcom. However, the vast majority of these targets are not being achieved. For example, in 2024-25, Royal Mail delivered only 76.5% of first-class mail within 1 working day of collection, against the target of 93%. They also missed their target for second-class mail to be delivered within 3 working days of collection, as well as their targets for daily delivery routes. Last July, Ofcom announced that Royal Mail will start to deliver second-class letters on every other weekday and not on Saturdays to help cut costs. This is a deeply worrying decision, and it could leave countless people who rely on these deliveries in the lurch. People need to know that their post will arrive on time so that they can go about their lives, and this move flies right in the face of that. The sorry saga of Royal Mail delays has been going on for far too long, despite the tireless work of their staff members, and I wish to add my comments to those of other honourable members in the room about the excellent work that posties do. I was very privileged to visit Mortlake Delivery Office just before Christmas, and they've been working incredibly hard there, and they're doing really, really well on their targets, I'm really happy to say. But obviously that is not the case across the country, and more needs to be done. People are rightly disappointed with the service provided. Instead of giving Royal Mail a free pass, Ofcom needs to step in and act by holding this failing service fully accountable. Ofcom needs to think again and not let Royal Mail off the hook at the expense of people who expect the bare minimum of their post to arrive on time. For many rural communities, the pattern of the closure of services has been compounded by rural public transport being cut, making it even harder for residents to reach alternative services. Bus route reductions leave some villages with little to no public transport, worsening isolation. Bus services are the backbone of economic activity in communities across our country, but particularly crucial in rural areas where accessibility to local amenities and services are greater distances apart. If the government is serious about growth, then it would invest in services which will boost our struggling town centres and high streets. The increase in the fare cap to £3 is a bus tax that will hit working people, rural communities and people on low incomes the most. Rural areas of the UK face a distinct set of challenges compared to their urban counterparts. While government support exists through various grants, loans and initiatives, several issues including infrastructure challenges, the phasing out of EU funding and higher costs related to transport, energy and supply chains can disadvantage rural businesses more severely. So I thank the Honourable Member for South Shropshire for his work in securing this debate. I look forward to hearing from the Minister what steps he is taking to ensure that communities in rural areas will be able to benefit from the vital service which post offices provide. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Stringer.
Rebecca Paul on behalf of the Conservatives.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Stringer, and to be here today responding on behalf of the opposition. I sincerely congratulate my honourable friend, the member for South Shropshire, for securing this debate and for the incredible persistence with which he has fought for his constituents. As my honourable friend made so clear in his own speech, a functioning postal service is not a nice-to-have in rural Britain. Rather, it is part of the vital infrastructure of daily life. The post is how you receive medical letters, time-sensitive official correspondence, and the things you cannot simply pick up on the high street. For small businesses, farms and sole traders, it is how goods, invoices and documents move. We should not underestimate the harms when this important service fails. There are two linked issues I would like to cover today. The first is the resilience of the post office network. The second is the reliability of deliveries and the way failures fall hardest on rural areas. Beginning with the network. As of October 2025, there were around 11,638 post office branches in the UK, and the company is committed to maintaining around 11,500 branches. The post office is publicly owned, but the vast majority of branches are run by independent postmasters inside local shops. In my experience, this is why they are so deeply woven into rural life and why, when a branch closes, the town or village feels it immediately and deeply. The network is supposed to be underpinned by access criteria, including that 95% of the rural population should be within 3 miles of a post office, and that 95% of the population of every postcode district should be within 6 miles of one. So even remote communities have a minimum level of access. These are sensible measures of access. It is therefore deeply concerning that the Department for Business and Trade Green Paper on the future of the Post Office explicitly asks whether to keep the existing requirements, remove the minimum 11,500 branch requirement, or replace it with a different framework altogether. Rural Britain has heard this language before, a different way of meeting obligations. It's often a Whitehall euphemism for a quiet downgrade, where the network looks stable on paper but comes thinner in practice, with reduced hours, reduced services and longer journeys for those without cars.
While the government appears to be drifting, the Conservative Party is clear about what the Post Office is for. It is more than a business. It is part of the UK's social and economic fabric, especially in rural areas, and especially as bank branches continue to vanish from our high streets. Indeed, for many communities, the Post Office is now the most realistic place to do basic banking, withdraw cash or deposit takings. There is also a straightforward point about support. A nationwide network, especially in rural areas, will not always be commercially viable on pure retail footfall alone. That is why public funding has played a role. The last Conservative government provided over £2.5 billion in funding in the past decade to sustain the nationwide network, including support for branches in uncommercial areas. This turned out to be money well spent in light of the ongoing utilisation of the Post Office network. Post Office data shows record levels of cash deposits at branches and significant use by both personal and business customers, alongside the rollout of banking hubs operated in partnership with Cash Access UK. So when the Minister responds, I hope we will hear some reassurance on support for the Post Office network. Can we have a commitment today to retaining a minimum network size of at least 11,500 branches? Will we keep the rural and postcode district access criteria? And will sub-postmasters be properly supported so rural branches do not become financially untenable? I now turn to deliveries because this is, after all, where constituents, including my own, are impacted when the service breaks down. The Universal Postal Service is a promise which sadly has been repeatedly broken. In October 2025, Ofcom fined Royal Mail £21 million for missing its 2024 to 2025 delivery targets, finding that only 77% of first-class mail and 92.5% of second-class mail was delivered on time, far below the long-standing universal service targets. Ofcom has since moved to reform parts of the universal service obligation, including allowing second-class letters to be delivered on alternate weekdays, Monday to Friday, and adjusting headline targets while introducing new backstop measures designed to prevent extreme delays. There is a legitimate discussion to be had about sustainability and falling letter volumes, but reform must not become cover for a two-tier Britain where rural residents simply wait longer as a matter of course. That is why the focus must now be on delivery officers, staffing and day-to-day operational reality. In my own Reigate constituency, we face ongoing concerns about the standard of postal services in the village of Banstead. Constituents have raised this with me repeatedly since the general election, and with good reason. One of the key issues appears to be staffing. Royal Mail has admitted to higher than normal levels of sickness and vacancies, and when I visited the delivery office serving Banstead, it was clear that morale there was extremely low. Meanwhile, there is an operational inefficiency built in. Banstead is served by a delivery office based in Epsom, meaning staff travel before rounds even begin. I think we can all guess what this leads to. One constituent received 10 items of post on January the 30th after receiving none in the preceding 10 days. Others report the same pattern of long gaps followed by sudden floods. If that is the experience of a well-connected part of Surrey, then it should shock no one that deeply rural areas are hit even harder. In South Shropshire, my honourable friend has highlighted severe delays, and the frustration of his constituents is wholly understandable. So what should happen next? First, the Minister should make clear that regulatory fines are not the end of the story. Ofcom's enforcement action was accompanied by requirements for Royal Mail to take corrective steps. The government should press for transparent reporting at delivery office level, with a particular focus on rural performance, so communities can see whether their service is improving and where the problems sit. Second, ministers must ensure that any future changes to the universal service protect rural users. If second class is delivered less often, that should not translate into worse outcomes for rural areas. Backstop measures are welcome, but they must be enforced, and they must be felt in places that have been left behind. People do not care about clever statistics if their letters still arrive late, in clumps, or not at all. Third, the government should recognise the interdependence of the system. The post office is not a shop counter, it is part of the national postal infrastructure. Therefore, any reform must be judged by a simple test. Does it improve the lived experience of rural users? Let me end by returning to my honourable friend. He has done what good MPs should do, listened locally, engaged with the operators and brought the issue here for debate. To be clear, though, neither he nor rural Britain is asking for special treatment. They are asking for fairness and competence. A letter posted in this country should arrive when the sender is told it will arrive. A rural post office branch should not be quietly allowed to wither. I look forward to the Minister's response and hope we will hear some meaningful commitments on these issues today. Thank you.
We've caught up some time, so Minister, I'd be grateful if you could leave just a couple of minutes at the end for a wind-up speech from the proposer. Minister.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Stringer. I congratulate the member for South Shropshire for securing this debate and for making such a passionate case on behalf of his constituents. As the Postal Services Minister, I was interested to hear him talk about how that dates back to the time of Henry VIII, a political figure who was hated in Scotland, dangerously overweight and had trouble with his wife. So postal services are in much different and safer hands today. As so many members have said, postal services in rural areas and, for that matter, across the country are not simply an administrative matter. If this was simply a case of your bank statement coming late, then few of us would be so passionate about it. And the member for Horsham really passionately set out just how devastating the consequences can be of the postal service not working. Postal services are they're a lifeline, they're a point of connection and a cornerstone of communities. I know from my relatives in Highland areas in Scotland just how essential that connection is. And the member for Caithness, Sutherland and Easter Ross, to reassure him, I will raise the issue of his wife's missing dress in the diesel lorry. With Royal Mail, but it's as true in the south of Scotland and rural areas all over the United Kingdom. And if I can say to the member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweedale that I'm sorry his grandson's card didn't arrive, but maybe I can put onto Hansard a belated happy birthday to him in some way to make up for that. All of our constituents place immense value on reliable postal deliveries, accessible post offices and the assurance that even the most remote households remain firmly connected to the rest of the country. As others have, I want to pay tribute to the posties and to the postmasters and postmistresses across the UK who serve their communities well over and above the level of compensation that they get for it. My honourable friend, the member for Corby and East Northamptonshire, put it best and reminded us that whatever criticisms and complaints honourable members have today, it's in no way directed at those extraordinary staff members who work so hard. Yes.
I'm very grateful for the Minister to give way, and obviously I think we all agree that our posties work really, really hard. But one of the problems that has been described to me in Shropshire is recruitment and retention of those posties because their conditions are poor. Royal Mail promised me that they would put in extra rounds in North Shropshire to alleviate that problem. And as far as I know, that only happened last week. Why are they acting so slowly, and what pressure can he bring to bear on them to improve the conditions for our posties?
Yeah. I think she makes a really important point that I think being a postie is a good job. We need to make sure it's an attractive job. And I'll come to my discussions with Royal Mail on those and other matters shortly. Others have mentioned the broader technological changes in society have reshaped how people live and work, and as well as creating challenges for Royal Mail and for the Post Office, it's also important to remember that these institutions create that sense of continuity in that time of change. We are committed to the universal postal service, that guarantee that letters and parcels can be delivered at a uniform price to every address, however remote. And I certainly.
I'm glad the government is committed to that, but I'm not sure that the Royal Mail is, and that is the problem. So Ofcom fines are clearly not working because they keep repeating, that is the Royal Mail, the same mistakes they have made. I hope the Minister will just note this moment in time, this debate today, because I'm very, very concerned if Royal Mail is making the same mistakes, just paying the fines, baking that into their business plan. The Minister will no doubt later on say he has limited powers because it's now a private company. If that is the case, it is likely that all of our constituents are going to see a further decline in letter delivery services. If that is the case, would the Minister at least commit for the government to apply for a judicial review under the failure to disclose necessary documents at the point of sale and failing to deliver the legal obligation of the universal service obligation. If the government don't intervene, I believe we are going to see a complete collapse of the letter service delivery.
Well, I'll come to my discussions with Royal Mail shortly, and I know he and I are discussing this in a few days' time, face-to-face as well. I share the deep frustration that's been voiced here today, and the point that it's not just that Royal Mail have that legal obligation, it's that they have an obligation and a responsibility, as was mentioned, in our democracy. There are special measures in place around postal votes. They've traditionally taken on additional staff and sweeps of post boxes, and would absolutely insist and expect that that is what happens in the elections that the gentleman raises. I met Royal Mail's Chief Executive and Senior Management yesterday, specifically to raise concerns that members across the House have shared with me in recent weeks. Royal Mail knows that it's not always delivered, and I was given an absolute commitment that they will work to deliver the best possible service to customers, while accepting that there have been service challenges. In particular, the member for South Devon, member for Rushcliffe, member for North Shropshire, member for the Wrekin, the member for South East, South End East and Rochford, and the member for Strangford, all mentioned concerns about NHS appointments getting through, and that's a particular issue that I'm pursuing in conjunction with colleagues in the Department for Health, because there is that ability to make sure that those get through. Turning to the Honourable Member's constituency of South Shropshire, I know the area suffered widespread disruption in the early part of January after the storms, and I know there were times where deliveries and the rotation of mail processes couldn't be followed because of that. Can I say the honourable gentleman engaged with Royal Mail, and they did say to me that they do welcome that, and they do think it's important for honourable members to continue to do that. And I know hundreds of honourable members will have visited their local sorting offices over Christmas. I will personally ensure that every single issue that has been raised by honourable members here is communicated back to Royal Mail at a senior level, because customers, particularly those in rural areas, must see visible, sustained improvements in reliability, timeliness and delivery office performance. The discussions that we've had today will inform every engagement I've had with Royal Mail, and as I said yesterday, I made it clear that people not getting their mail is simply not good enough. Yes.
The member for Corby actually raised a very important point in relation to the last mile, and this is something that really concerns me and my constituency, is the sustainability of the Royal Mail in that context, because delivery companies are taking on deliveries, but then they're leaving the hard bit up the track, the miles into the valley, to Royal Mail to do, and I can't see how that can be sustainable.
I'll come to that point on other parcel providers shortly. I should say as well that before the takeover of Royal Mail, we did secure commitments from the business's new owners, the EP Group, so that in addition to retaining that golden share in Royal Mail, we also secured that commitment to prevent further value being taken out of Royal Mail until quality of service improves. Yes, I will.
All those questions we posed. One of the questions that I posed was in relation to the minimum wage. If you want to retain staff, you've got to pay them a decent wage. And the problem in Newton Ards is that some of the staff who have been there for many years are getting the minimum wage. Therefore, if something better comes up in the place, they're away. And you can't blame them, because if you've got to pay bills, you've got to do that. Is the Minister in any way able to encourage it? Instead of paying a fine, which they could be used to pay the wages, would it not be better for them to be more sensible, give the workers a decent wage and retain them and improve the service from the very bottom up?
He makes a really important point on staff retention, and obviously management and the workforce are working on the implementation of reforms, but also of the pay deal, and I think that will play an important role in hopefully helping to tackle what he has spoken about. As well as my discussions with Royal Mail, I've held detailed discussions with Ofcom, which has an essential role in improving standards, and as the Honourable Gentleman has just pointed out, Ofcom have told Royal Mail that they must publish a credible improvement plan that delivers significant and continuous improvement. And they've made clear that without that, fines are likely to continue. The honourable gentleman mentioned the context to this, the changes in consumer behaviour and the changes in communication. The average household now receives only 4 letters per week, down from 14, but the number of addresses in the country has risen by 4 million. And to protect that USO and for the long term in that context, Ofcom have introduced reforms projected to deliver up to £450 million in annual savings, helping get the company into a more financially sustainable basis. But we now need Royal Mail to work with its workforce and unions to deliver the service we all expect. Several honourable members have raised concerns with slightly notorious now parcel providers other than Royal Mail. Ministers and Ofcom have both made it clear that it's not good enough the way that they are operating and that they are on notice.
Very generous. On the golden share point and Royal Mail having been put on notice, what powers, perhaps I'm wrong, but what powers of intervention or sanction, what solution can the Minister provide to my constituents who listen to this debate and perhaps hoping for some sort of solution? We haven't heard it yet.
Yeah. Well, he mentions about what powers when the Royal Mail was taken over as part of that deed when they took over, were all sorts of assurances, as I mentioned a moment ago, about not making sure that the owners cannot take value out of the company until they improve service. So their interests, their financial interests, are deeply tied to the service that our constituents receive. Turning to the rural post office network briefly, we currently have the network of 11,500 post office branches around the country, and most people live within 3 miles of one. But those averages, as other members have pointed out, don't paint the full picture. The government has invested significantly in the post office network precisely because it provides those essential services. And the post office, while publicly owned, obviously operates as a commercial business with its own board of directors. It has and must have commercial freedom to deliver the branch network within the parameters that we set. Several members raised concerns around the green paper process and whether we were continuing with the current level of service. Our starting assumption was that we would, but we thought it was right that we had that debate and discussion, given how long it's been since we had that conversation. And we recognise absolutely, just finally, the importance, as the Honourable Lady spoke about the banking services and the Post Office, which is why last month myself and the Economic Secretary to the Treasury held a roundtable to talk about continuing that relationship. Thank you.
Stuart Anderson. Thank you for your excellent time management in this, Mr. Stringer. It's great to wind up at the end. I also thank every member that has come today, particularly my Shropshire and surrounding area MPs from North Shropshire, Wyre Forest, but I've really enjoyed working with the Right Honourable Member from the Wrekin, who's had a tenacious campaign on this and know is following up with yourself. What we have seen today is what most of us get asked in our constituencies. Why don't we all work together to see a solution? There is cross-party support here. Everyone is identifying that there is a major failing and a problem. And I think the Minister would do very well to follow up with the Corby and East Northampton MP, who has a huge amount of experience in this area, and bring that in and look at how that can be brought within government. We have seen a problem here, and we're not asking for anything new. We're asking for a service that is a minimum service level to be delivered to rural constituents. Across every constituency, our constituents are suffering and they are not getting the mail. And we've seen the detriment from missed cancer appointments, screening, bank letters, legal letters, problems, isolation. This is causing an absolute problem for all of our constituents. So thank you today for everyone coming together and doing this. And I'm saying to my constituents, I will continue to follow up with Royal Mail, as the Minister has outlined, and I thank him for summing up today on those points. I will raise every single case. Whether it's one missed letter, get in touch with me, because I will follow that up continually. I have my survey open today, and I just want Royal Mail to know I'm an exceptionally tenacious person that goes after everything, will not accept no for an answer, but I am going to campaign, obviously with many of you in here, to see that every one of our constituents gets the service that they are promised, and every single letter will be delivered on time. And I will not stop until I see that delivered. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered postal services in rural areas. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order.
Perfect.
Quickly and quietly so we can start the next debate, please.